Hello, everybody, and welcome to my part of the fairy tale chapter review. Now, of course, luckily, we got two chapters this week, 431 and 432. Now, I'm gonna review them. I'm not gonna individually rate them or, try and discuss any one, like each chapter individually. I'm gonna discuss them together because they kind of feel like really one big chapter, because so basically what happens is it's basically Fairy Tail just mowing down the enemy, and they're showcasing all their power. You have Natsu and Gray just friggin' obliterating Gray, or sorry, Natsu obliterating people, just burning people up with like they're like just boom, like you know acres of flame just bursting out of nowhere with great power. And friggin' Gray's friggin' like points at a guy to freeze him, and then at another point he just snaps his finger and like a whole crowd of people get frozen. Like Fairy Tail has this, honestly, Avatar. Basically what I feel about this Avatar arc so far is that for the most part it feels like it's more or less utilized as a means to basically showcase that Fairy Tail is beasts, that these people have gotten way too powerful for any normal, dark guilds or whatever, or normal villains to stand against. My favorite was Lucy. The fact that in her Taurus form she's insanely, like, she has an insane strength boost. I mean, she friggin' uses her whip to create like a almost like an semi earthquake that like destroys the ground and a bunch of people. Then you have Urza, who's coming in from the rear, no pun intended, and she's taking out a bunch of people. They try and use magic to fight back, but she jumps off her horse and transforms in midair while flipping into a new armor that has swords for wings, which is similarly to that of her Heaven's Wheel armor, and she just mows them all down. So then one Avatar guy shows up with his sword to, try and take on Urza. And his sword seemingly is working because he's destroying the swords one by one. And we find out that his sword is imbued with dark magic that allows it to rot or basically decay anything it touches. But then Urza's like, "Oh, I'm Urza. You want to know how I win this fight? Because my swords can hit you even if they don't make direct contact." So the guy gets sliced up without even being touched by the sword. Another Urza type victory for Urza, you know. So after that, that's pretty much the end of the first chapter, but it doesn't really feel like an end because since both chapters came out together, you just immediately go into the next chapter and it feels, like it's one big chapter. And then we go into, we see Lucy and her Taurus getting hit by that one chick who has the, the magic that causes internal damage, and we find out that it's, she can basically inflict viruses on people, and she tries, Lucy's fight is able to somehow fight this virus that's affecting her bowels, and basically is hinting at that, you're gonna have diarrhea. This is gonna give you massive diarrhea. You better get to a toilet fast. And then she's fighting and is gonna still try to attack otherwise, but then they they decide that the virus chick decides that she's gonna then say, oh well, then if that's not good enough, well then let's see what happens when I have a virus target your head. And just when you think everything's gonna go, Lucy's gonna start screaming out in pain. Nothing happens because Wendy shows up and activates her healing wind magic to basically negate it and prevent her from basically doing anything. She tries to sneak up behind, and then the virus chick tries to sneak up behind Lucy, but then Wendy warns Lucy, and Lucy basically punches her in the gut with a Taurus powered up punch, which I know we all know how comically, the Lucy kick and the Lucy punch, the Lucy techniques are, but this is actually powered up with Taurus's enhanced strength. So this actually has some major power behind it. Then we have, then we switch over to Gray, who's fighting this Briar chick who can split herself into 4 clones, and each one has a different personality. One's sad, one's angry, one's something else, and then there's one that's like a loving one. And the loving, they all say a bunch of different things, and then the loving one's like, "Oh, I've always loved you," and that's when Juvia shows up and like, "Well, that means you're my love rival," and then basically she just obliterates the loving Briar with Water Claw, which looks like a pretty powerful technique. And then we have the other ones are like, "Oh, how could you do that?" And then Gray just pretty much just waves his hand, and the 3 other clones get frozen solid. Juvia, gets all over to Gray, does his thing. He does a semi-quick apology, but he's like, "Okay, we got to get back to work." And he's like, Juvia understands. And one of my favorite things about this chapter, Gruvia is real. Like, you cannot, like, this, like, I'm surprised they haven't done it yet, like, had sex yet, because, I mean, they're literally stripping in the middle of battle, side by side, simultaneously, in perfect sync with one another. Now, of course, obviously, Juvia has an under outfit that she wears that, to cover up her top, so that way she's not exposing herself that way. But the fact that she's done this, means that we're going to see a lot of, Gray and Juvia stripping side by side in the future, which is awesome because Gruvia for the win. Then they just start taking out a bunch of people, people taken out left and right, and then they're like, how the hell, people are worried because they're talking to the high priest, basically saying, they're monsters. How are we going to stop them? We were 2,000 strong, and they're like 7 or 8 of them. And, they're just annihilating. They're too powerful. And Natsu's like, well, we can't afford to lose. We are fairy tale mages. And the high priest is like, well, this is all good and well, but, this is all according to my plan, and that the purification is still on schedule. So, which is very intriguing because it is very it's very ominous because, Fairy Tail's just wiping the floor with them. And apparently this guy factored in the fact that Fairy Tail would show up and obliterate all their members. So what is this was his original purification plan, to wipe out the town? Or was his original plan was to gather a bunch of followers and then attempt to use them to wipe out a town in order to, create a lot of death to summon Zeref, but instead planned that, he knew that someone was going to come and stop them, and it seems like he even knew that it was going to be Fairy Tail, and that I think there's a possibility that he is sacrificing the members of Avatar as a means to summon Zeref. So it'll be interesting to see what this priest guy is capable of and what his plan is. Now, according to this, at the end, they says that we're going to get another double chapter. In fact, at the beginning of the first chapter, when we had the Fairy Tail cover page, it said that this is the second of 4 double chapter issues. Because last week we got 2 chapters. This week we got 2 chapters, and we're going to get 2 more. The next 2 releases of Fairy Tail chapters are going to be double chapter releases. So in the span of 4 weeks, we got 8 chapters. We're going to be getting, over the course of 4 chapter releases, we got 8 chapters. So that's definitely going to be very, very good. I guess it's his way of speeding the process along of trying to get through this, because it's what it is. I give props to him, man, because the fact that he's doing 4 releases in a row, doing double chapters, as well as doing the monthly Ice Trail, and or no, he doesn't do the Ice Trail, but the monthly Fairy Tail Zero. Like, props off to you. That is just, you know, I wish that, we could, others had, but the stamina like you. But then again, I don't know your particular situation. You might not have it as hard because you're not as popular and you're not in Weekly Shonen Jump. Yes, I actually looked it up. It is a shonen manga, but it comes out in Shonen Magazine, not Weekly Shonen Jump, which is a totally different magazine, which is why its Fairy Tail wasn't in J-Star Victory Versus. So it's definitely disappointing, but oh well. Overall, these chapters together, like individually, if they were going to be released individually, they wouldn't be. They'd be, kind of like, oh well, whatever. But together, they're both impressive separately, but they're more like whatever because But that's why I feel like a lot of these chapters are going to be. That's why he's choosing to do these double chapters, because they're like not much happened, but it's still pretty awesome chapters. But together, a lot happens, and we have a lot of awesomeness. So I would have to say this was a very good chapter. In fact, no, this was an awesome chapter. Like awesome, like this is probably the second, amazing. No, not amazing. Like great plus, because it wasn't like, oh my god, amazing, because there's still a lot of fairy tale things like Urza's bullshit armor, but overall it was still very good at chapters, and I can't wait for the next set. So I hope you guys enjoy this review, and if you haven't already seen Strider's review, watch it. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Alright, so we have a double chapter of Fairy Tail this week, once again. And apparently next time that we have a chapter will be a double chapter as well. So let's get into this. So we had, 431 and 432? Yeah. I'm not going to separate them by chapter because there really wasn't much progression in each. So I'll kind of combine them. So in these chapters, basically we're just the fight, or should I say the massacre, between Fairy Tail and Avatar. And basically they beat the shit out of everybody. Now, I mean, Gray and Natsu are doing their thing, but the thing I want to mention first is the fact that, my prediction, and a lot of people's prediction probably was right, with the fact that Lucy, when she has taken on the Taurus form, has enhanced strength. So she now is very physically powerful. And Taurus showed some good shit with Earthwave. That was cool. So, the whole thing with Lucy and Taurus, I thought this was definitely a step in the right direction. Simply just because, Lucy needs like all power can get in order to keep up with the rest of Fairy Tail's overpowered, plot-induced craziness. And Erza, she has a new Requip form that looks actually pretty cool. The design is actually pretty sick, where the fact she has wings, but they're swords, and they can like levitate and move like freely, basically according to her will, which I thought was pretty cool. So the one girl, I think her name is Brya, the darker skinned chick, she goes after Gray. Meanwhile, the lighter skinned guy goes after Erza and gets completely wrecked, of course. But what else would you expect from Erza? It's Erza. So, I think his name is Jerome. Yeah, Jerome. And, he's able to break some of the swords, and she quickly defeats him, for now, at least. I think the fight's over, but I don't know if... It might not be. We'll see. Regardless, she ain't gonna lose, because she's Erza. And 432, like, we had Brya versus Gray. Gray beat the fuck out of her. I mean, the clones happened, and she revealed the fact that she fell in love with Gray. What a surprise. And right on cue, enter Juvia. Uh, so her and Wendy, they're fighting, which is fine. I mean, I do like that Juvia is back on her feet and fighting. That is something like that I do like. But unfortunately, the reason she came back was for Gray. Not because she's a strong character, but because Gray. I mean, that's literally it, because she was still sick, and then all of a sudden Gray's back. Oh, she's back. Because she basically came back to be on cue with the fact that Gray was back, and then Brian is like, I love Gray. So, I mean, it's really not a step in the right direction for her character. It's pretty much stagnant. So, I mean, it's good that she's back and she's fighting, but I don't think that it does anything for her character particularly. Wendy can use Dragon Force at will, which is good. She needs it to be able to keep up. And I mean, honestly, that's almost it, except for the ending of 432, which covers the fact that um, what's his name? Arlok, I think his name is, was able to. He says he predicted everything up until this point, which means there's going to be some kind of counterattack by Arlok. He's the most mysterious of the Avatar members so far. He's obviously going to do some shit. Is it going to work? Oh, fuck no. Come on. Though, unless he's Zareth or whatever have you. I mean, he might be in Zareth in disguise. That would be quite ironic. The guy who's leading the worshippers of Zareth is Zareth himself. I don't know. I mean, it would make some sort of sense, but at the same time, it would be very, very ironic. But otherwise, I'm sure he has something. If he's not a super hacked guy, it's not going to work. So, uh, yeah, I mean, that's it. These two chapters were, I guess they were okay. I mean, the fighting was okay. Like I said, I liked Erza's new form. It was pretty interesting, and Gray doing his thing, Natsu doing his thing, I guess. Wendy doing her thing. Lucy definitely doing her thing, which is good. Lucy stepping up to the plate, which is what we want. Uh, it's what I've wanted for a while, is Lucy to become more fight-oriented rather than just be cute. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. We'll see you guys whenever the next chapter comes out.